For Drusus Julius Caesar, known as Castor, it appeared as though his father's term as Imperator of Rome was not off to a strong start. While Castor's father seemed content to allow the late Caesar Augustus to take the blame for the execution of Posthumus Agrippa, Augustus's last grandson, many whispered that it was Tiberius himself behind the mysterious murder. The Senate was equally divided on the matter of Castor's father. Expected to at least feign reluctance in accepting the enormous task handed down to him by the divine Caesar Augustus, Tiberius had prevaricated for so long that many thought he was earnest and truly did not want the position. But the worst of his father's troubles came from the legions. On the Rhine River, the legios 1 Germanica, 5 Alaudi, 14th Gemina, and 16th Gallica had erupted in violent mutiny. These represented half the legions under the command of Castor's adoptive brother, Germanicus Julius Caesar, but they also represented only half of the overall mutiny. In Pannonia, 4 more legions, the 8th Augusta, 9th Hispania, 15th Apollinaris, and 20th Vallaria Victrix, had also joined the uprising. As supreme commander of Rome's mighty legions, Tiberius Caesar was beseeched by the Senate to journey to the mutinies himself and settle the matter in person. But with uprisings in 2 different provinces, which was the greater threat to Rome's peace and stability? Castor's father might set out for one mutiny, only to discover too late that the other insurrection was the more explosive. And so Tiberius chose to remain in Rome, from where he could monitor both uprisings simultaneously. Because Germanicus was in charge of the legions on the Rhine, Tiberius opted to see how his adopted son and heir might resolve the situation. And as a litmus test, Tiberius would send Castor, his biological son, to quell the mutiny in Pannonia. But Castor knew this mission was not just about restoring order to the legions. It was a test of his capabilities and his loyalty. Failure was not an option. And to make certain of Castor's success, Tiberius ordered the Praetorian Lucius Aelius Sejanus to accompany him, just as the divine Caesar Augustus had once ensured the success of the young Gaius Caesar. Sejanus was the son of the Praetorian commander Lucius Seius Strabo, as well as a personal confidant of Castor's father Tiberius Caesar. And while Sejanus brought with him a wealth of military experience and a stern reputation, his presence made Castor uncomfortable. Sejanus had once been part of Gaius Caesar's guaranteed success. 15 years earlier, he had gone east with the retinue of Gaius and his Claudian wife, Livilla. As one of several Claudian supporters who surrounded the heir of Caesar Augustus, Sejanus's duty was to advise and protect Gaius Caesar, while simultaneously preserving the Claudian interests of Castor's grandmother, Livia Drusilla. 4 years later, Sejanus returned to Rome without Gaius Caesar, who had been stabbed in Armenia and later died in the kingdom of Lycia. As an advisor, Sejanus had failed to notice that one of Gaius Caesar's men had greatly enriched himself by selling access to Gaius Caesar and by kidnapping Eastern royalty so he could demand exorbitant funds for their release. And when Gaius Caesar was stabbed in the shoulder by an Armenian warlord, Sejanus had also failed as protector. Or had he? After the death of Gaius Caesar, Castor's father was raised up and named Caesar Augustus' primary heir, and Castor was quickly married to Gaius's widow, Livilla. Suddenly, the succession of Caesar Augustus was complete. Apart from the dark questions which circled the Praetorian's previous assignments and his quick rise within the ranks of the Praetorian Guard, Castor had another and more pragmatic reason to be wary of Sejanus. His attendance in Pannonia meant that Castor's father would receive unfiltered reports of Castor's every action and of his every word. Castor would have to be cautious. Upon arriving in Pannonia, Castor and Sejanus, accompanied by 2 cohorts of Praetorian guards and a group of senators, found the legions in a state of chaos. The soldiers' grievances mirrored those of their counterparts on the Rhine: delayed pay, extended terms of service, and unmet promises from the late Caesar Augustus. Determined to succeed, Castor took immediate action. Climbing the military rostra, he addressed the soldiers directly, acknowledging their hardships and promising swift resolution. As Castor spoke to the legions, making promises and assurances in the name of his father Tiberius Caesar, Lucius Aelius Sejanus moved in the shadows. Using his Praetorian guards to assess the loyalty of the centurions, Sejanus quickly identified many of the mutiny's ringleaders. A group of disgruntled centurions who had rallied behind a man named Pausanias were found responsible for inciting Pannonia's legions to rise up. Soon, each of the mutinous centurions, including Pausanias himself, turned up dead, killed in secret. With no witnesses able to identify the culprits, the deaths of these centurions caused ripples of panic to spread among the mutineers, quickly eroding their confidence in the righteousness of their cause. Thanks to Sejanus's efforts with the ringleaders, the mutineers began to experience internal division. Yet, until the mutiny was fully quelled, Castor walked a tightrope, balancing the need to maintain order with the risk of provoking further rebellion, and his father. With the mutineers' certainty beginning to falter, the legions grew more amenable to Castor's promises. He arranged for a temporary increase in their rations and benefits, and assured them that their demands would be addressed once the Senate could deliberate. Castor also took up residence in the same conditions as the soldiers, sharing their barracks and their rations, a gesture that helped thaw the soldiers' hardened hearts. However, realizing that promises and gestures alone would not suffice, Castor dispatched urgent messages to his father in Rome, pleading for funds and for the authority to meet the soldiers' demands. Then something extraordinary occurred. The full moon, shining brightly in the night sky, suddenly turned red. For Sejanus, the unexpected lunar eclipse provided a perfect opportunity to bring the mutiny to an end once and for all. Utilizing his Praetorian cohorts and the loyal Pannonian centurions, Sejanus spread whispers among the mutinous and superstitious legions that the eclipse was a terrible omen. The blood moon was clearly a sign that the divine gods, which now included Caesar Augustus, were displeased and had turned their backs on those who dared rise against their emperor. As the days passed, Castor's efforts, coupled with the executions of the ringleaders and the mysterious lunar eclipse, began to bear fruit. General discontent began to subside. The Pannonian legions, upon witnessing Castor's genuine concern for their well-being and his willingness to share their hardships, started to view him as a leader who truly cared. Slowly but surely, the fires of mutiny were extinguished, and the legions of Pannonia were, finally, brought back under control. Upon returning to Rome, Castor and Sejanus reported their results to Tiberius, and then went their separate ways. Sejanus went home to his wife, Apicata, and their 2 children, while Castor reunited with Livilla and their young daughter, Julia Livia. For Castor, the success of his mission was crucial, not just for his standing in the eyes of his father, but for the overall stability of the empire. Despite the devious and underhanded tactics employed by Sejanus in Pannonia, Castor had successfully navigated the crisis and put down the mutiny, a result his brother Germanicus had yet to achieve in Germania. However, with the outright murder of Roman centurions within Pannonia's camps, Castor also witnessed the ruthless brutality that Lucius Aelius Sejanus was willing and almost eager to employ. The cold efficiency with which Sejanus had eliminated the ringleaders left Castor uneasy. He began to view Sejanus with even more suspicion than before, questioning whether such ruthlessness was reserved only for mutineers, or if it was a hallmark of Sejanus's character. Castor could not shake the ever-increasing feeling that Sejanus had been involved in the mysterious death of Gaius Caesar 12 years earlier. At that time, Castor's father had just returned from exile. He had neither command nor authority. So if Sejanus was involved in Gaius's death, who had given the order? And so Castor resolved to keep a closer eye on the Praetorian, wary of the potential threat such a character posed, not only to himself, but to his father. The experience in Pannonia had shown Castor that sometimes the greatest dangers lay not on the battlefield, but from those standing closest.